There's this guy that was an early sort of advocate of India, who I got in a big fight with at the first yoga journal conference that there ever was that I was invited to. And, you know, I got in a big fight with him because he was talking about the glories of the Sanatana Dharma and Hindutva, and you know, that was just so not my orientation. Now, that might surprise you that I would say that, because we're surrounded by by images that are both Hindu and Buddhist. But you know, we're surrounded by those images because they really represent my life journey. They represent, you know, the context in which I have studied and practiced. But, you know, so you might, and of course I'm initiated as a sannyasi. So you might be surprised to hear me say, I'm not even slightly religious. I don't consider myself a religious person at all. And I also consider these days that religion is a giant part of the problem. It has nothing to do with the solution. But that's a whole nother story. The wonderful thing that and the other thing I fought with this guy about was, I thought he was just a giant salesman. You know, and we're not here to sell anybody anything. The thing for me was, you know, and I've described to you the period in which I discovered yoga. It was the late 60s. The thing that really touched me about yoga in those days was that I did yoga and I became in contact with myself, and I literally felt the tensions in my muscles let go, and I experienced an increase in the flow of energy in my muscles and in my nervous system, and I felt that release and that flow of energy, you know, allow me to make contact with a simple sweetness within myself that I discovered was always there. I practiced and I felt it more, and I practiced more and I felt it even more, and I practiced even more and, you know, dissolved into a whole puddle of bliss. Well, I started having all of these, you know, far out experiences, far out as a period, you know, phrase. I started having all these experiences that were wonderful, and, you know, I was living in so much joy that I wasn't interested in holding down a job at all, which was fine with me. I lived on unemployment for the extent. And before I was finished with unemployment, I met Rudy, who of course insisted that I take on a job, naturally. While I held that same space. And so what I want to say to you is our practice and the whole process of profound transformation is not a big deal. It's very simple. It's not rocket science. It's not complicated. You know, and the realization that you will have if you go deeply into this practice is very profound. Simply put, you know, if the ego, our body and this mind and this understanding that we have, that we're a separate person here in this world to do something, you know, or get something, you know, or get even with somebody, you know, is the problem. The ego becomes the center of gravity around which so many patterns of tension accumulate. And so, with the simple process, whenever we feel tense or bummed out or overwhelmed or confused or anxious or anything, you know, that doesn't really represent for us our true self, our highest self, our best self. We have the opportunity with our practice to immediately find our breath. First of all, we have the opportunity to recognize that we are not being our best self. That's the first thing that we can start to recognize as we meditate and practice. And then we can recognize it by finding our breath and feeling our body and releasing those tensions. You know, we become energy. The energy moves in our bodies, it moves in our muscles, it moves through our energetic mechanism, which is the chakras and the channels. We discover that. We can go deeply into it if we wish. But there is no moment in time when we don't have, you know, a simple technology, fancy word. I'm trying to demonstrate I'm very ancient and modern at the same time. A simple technology for letting go of all the overwhelm and the tension and the grump and the anxiety and the whatever, the depression. We don't have to live in any of that. We can choose to release all that tension and allow our creative energy to flow. And as we practice and find within ourselves that simple sweetness, which if we continue to practice will become an overwhelming joy, we can come to understand that, you know, the fundamental ground of our own self is not this body and not this mind, but is really an awareness which permeates this body and this mind, and an awareness that permeates every living thing on this earth and extends even further than that and further than that and further than that. And it's simple. It's not complicated. It starts with finding the simple joy in your heart that comes from just letting go of all the tension and all the whatever. And then finding and feeling your breath and releasing this body, and in doing so, over and over and over again, you know, what you'll begin to experience is that there is an energy that's connecting us. Not just you and me. I mean, we practice here to become aware of that connection and to cultivate that awareness and to make it strong. But we go out, we're connected to everybody and everything, and we can find that connection. And holding that awareness, you know, leads to a realization about the nature of the world, and holding that awareness leads to another realization about the nature of the universe, and we become liberated completely from all of this, the disappointment of our ancestors, free to experience a life that is fundamentally sweet and joyous and abundant. can be abundant in anything. Abundance is not particularly material, but it can turn into that. Doesn't matter. It'll turn into whatever it's going to turn into for you. It just doesn't matter. When you have joy in your heart, what else matters? How many hair dryers is going to make it more joyful? How many cars do you need in your garage? I mean, you know what I'm saying. And also you find, as you are able to hold that space and be in connection with other human beings who you don't allow, while holding the space, you don't allow them to like infect you with their tensions and their doubts and their everything. Because, you know, the world does not exist to do anything nice for you. And the whole idea, like I see on Facebook, this posting, the universe has your back. That is total bullshit. I mean, that is the worst bullshit. You know, it's important to be positive, but it's important to be positive about the power and the vibrancy of the aliveness that is your own deepest self. To say that something outside you has your back or is going to do something good for you is idiotic, and it's just setting you up to get screwed. The universe is a gigantic cheater, and if you let it, it will deal you every single time from the bottom of the deck. Bringing your attention into yourself and cultivating the flow of energy, which is the very essence of your own life, you will come to understand your life, you know, as an accumulation of the tensions of your ancestors passed down, you know, built up again and again and again and passed down to you. Rudy used to refer to it as a shit sandwich. You will be free of that, and this life for you and will be wonderful. It's not complicated. It's simple. Maybe you think, well, Kashmir Shaivism is complicated, or Tantric Buddhism is complicated, or something. It's not complicated. It's so simple. Of course, there are a million books written by people who don't have the slightest clue what the hell they're talking about. And so, whenever you read a book by somebody who doesn't know shit about what they're saying, it's complicated, right? I mean, the one thing you'll know, when you meet somebody, when you read a book or you meet somebody who just makes it simple, they know what they're talking about. When it's all complicated and difficult, it was written by somebody who doesn't have a clue. This is simple. You do not have to live in anxiety, in overwhelm, in depression, in disappointment, in difficulty. You don't have to live like that. You can release every tension and allow your creative energy to heal your body and heal your heart and heal your mind and expose your soul, which is in fact the only thing that is real about this whole experience. Everything else is just an accumulation of tension. We don't need a savior. We don't need a doctrine or a dogma. We don't. We need somebody who has done this before to make it simple and available for us. We need somebody who is an energy source who can be available for us should we actually choose to engage in the process of cultivating our own energy. And, you know, and we need the opportunity to be in conversation with people who are actually doing this, which, you know, brings our feet back on the ground over and over and again, and which reminds us in the times when we are overwhelmed, distressed, whatever, disappointed, that it's all about bringing our awareness inside ourselves and connecting to our own vital energy. And allowing that energy to flow reveals everything. Simple. Find it with your breath. Move it in your body until your body is settled, and then you will discover your energetic mechanism, which you move it in until that dissolves and you realize that there's only one thing, and that one thing is everything. Namaste.